Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Aviation podcast. My name, again, is Joe.
Joe!
I'm back!
Woohoo! Hey, welcome back, Joe.
Yeah,
I know it's been a little bit.
I'm actually clipping.
No, you're. It's been a while, so it's good to see
been
you.
A minute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good to hear you. Good to see you.
Thank you for being enthusiastic about my return.
Glad I'm not having to smell you.
Oh, well,
come on now.
Honestly, I threw some pants on earlier, and they were the pants from yesterday when we were out fishing, and I was like, why do I smell fish and worm guts?
Yeah, you did mention you were fishing the other day, so.
Yeah. My dad and I went fishing yesterday, and
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a good time.
So welcome back to the podcast. Welcome. I mean, really, we haven't done a whole lot, but we've been kind of keeping the ship steering in a rudderless night for sure. But I know that we've had like intermittent chats, but I've missed hanging out with you, man. I miss getting together on a regular, man.
Yeah, I mean, at least when we were getting together every other week to sit down and do this, we were keeping at least every other week communication going.
Yeah, at worst, and usually it was every week. We spend some time just chatting, catching up, doing the things, seeing how each other's doing, seeing if we can get a chance to get together. And so what I want to know is, last we talked, this was since Flight Fest. You were talking about that you had a bunch of life events, which is part of why I kind of took the reins and slowly but surely limped the podcast along for a little bit. We had some interesting guests along the way. We got you back on once. But now, so how have things been since you were last on? Since Flight Fest.
Since Flight Fest, and before that, the Valentine's Day Massacre, as we called it. Because that's the day half the company got their head rolled.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Half of our side.
Anyway. Never fun. So what's going on, man? Give us an update.
Well, first off, in case anybody happens to be listening, and I say this with the truest sincerity, I will forever remember my time at Apple Green, which is where I worked, with fond memories. Because I got to do some great things, especially as a guy that had no experience in the things I was doing. But it's been a bit of a bumpy road since then. And, Rachel, my wife, we decided that would be an opportunity to make the move that we wanted to make. And she got a job first, and I told her, go, I'll catch up. And I hadn't caught up to her yet, but,
okay.
I did get another job, finally.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you. And so, as we are sitting here recording now, I had put in my 2 weeks notice. That was this past Friday. This week, the whole week, I'm on vacation. I'm just taking a week off.
Yeah, man.
Try to get some work done here around the house. Get it ready to go on the market. I won't get it all done this week, but there'll be some work done here. And then Monday, the 30th of September, I start my new role.
What's that?
It will be, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, and without taking too much time, but also I don't fully know the full scope of it.
Well, even if it sounded like it was clear and very distinct, everybody's job is always a little fuzzy.
Yeah. So I'll be going to work for a company called Flycast Partners.
Okay.
We do ticketing system backends. Specifically, I guess the better term is we do ITSM, which I believe is IT Service Management.
Okay.
And so the experience I have with them, and they are somebody that I've worked with one of their people in my previous role, and so that's how I got in contact with their company and became aware of them, and got introduced to tools that then I've been hired to work on their side for clients is ticketing systems. In our case, that we use them for is for IT specifically, but it'll be ticketing system backends, and so I'll be configuring the backends of ticketing systems. To start out with, there'll be Fresh Service and Fresh Desk, I'm sure. Sort of the fresh lineup, but Fresh Service will be what I start with. And just, it sounds like, well, it's a ticketing system. What has to be configured? Well,
oh, there's
everything.
always so much that even you're like, oh, it's simple. It should be easy. Like, well, there's a lot more that goes into that.
I'll put it to you this way. The sandbox that my side of the company got for our ticketing system was, here's a thing that tickets can be created in. And then from there, it's, well, you may want to attach it to to an inbox that it reads from so people can email tickets. And there's a, portal that people can go to submit issues, but you can build things out and, pre-build tickets or service requests, and you have a catalog of things that they can choose from. And on the back end, it's, if a ticket comes in, who does it go to or where does it go to? And depending on what category the ticket's in, what's the escalation path? And you can even limit that it can't jump tracks and go into another path just by the normal escalation. So you can kind of restrict tickets so they go a certain way. And there's automations, and if something needs an approval, then, what's the process for that? And all that gets built in and configured and automated in a lot of ways. And there'll be consulting work done with client companies that'll be done. To begin with, I won't be part of those other than to shadow and learn. But there'll be conversations that have to be had with clients that are, what do you want this thing to do? And then back and forth and discussions to design and build out on paper what they want. And then it'll go to the team to be built. And that's what I'll be doing. So not the IT awesome. I've been doing.
No, but I mean, you've been working around and amongst that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So this is adjacent, we'll call it, which is awesome. That means that you get to spend a little bit of time growing in that direction, which is, again, that's just nothing but a giant productivity tool that almost everybody has to deal with one way or another. Whether, in my old job, I didn't have to deal with most of that a whole lot, but we did use it, A customer called in, a ticket be wrote by the people who answer the phone, it'd be passed to, some of the managers, it'd be, and then something was like, hey, you need to go out and do the thing, or, let's look at how this gets addressed. And then it gets sent back and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's in almost every industry in some form or another. It's obviously heavy in customer service and IT for sure. But it's used so many places. So yeah, that's good stuff, man. Good business. Congrats.
Yeah, it's
I bet you it's nice to not have to hunt anymore.
It is.
The hunt's a full-time job, man.
And I'm not very good at performing that job. Just bad at it. I suck at networking for job purposes, job and career purposes. Everywhere I go, I make contacts, but then to be able to utilize those to move forward is something else. But that's that.
Nice.
The current plan is I will continue to get the house ready for the market, and then I can get it on the market. Rachel has an apartment up in Raleigh, and whenever I'm done here, I will go up there, and that's able to work because this job is fully remote.
Nice.
So that'll be a challenge in and of itself because I've not had a fully remote position before.
Have job, will travel.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to really adjust to that. So I'm thinking The nice thing is I won't have an hour and a quarter commute just to get to the office.
Right. That's always nice.
I mean, I did it. It was a thing. I enjoyed the time on the road. But yeah,
I know. Yeah.
It'll be nice to roll out of bed and get ready for work and then sit down and be at work.
Yeah. I mean, there is something really nice, at least that the nice part about the drive was the time to prepare and get ready mentally and decompress so that the stuff kind of stayed in the car and at work. I didn't really come home as often as when you literally walk out of the room and it's like, oh, it's family life. Now we're no longer at work. You know, it's like, that's a quick transition. So, however, I'll take that that concession any day, right? Being able to just be at home and walk from room to room and be in work. Nope, not at work, you know?
Well, unfortunately, as an IT technician, when
you were kind of working wherever anyway.
Yeah, a lot of our stuff could be done remotely, but we still had to be in the office to be close to the sites. But the other side of that is, even when you go home in the evenings, like the business is still running until late at night. You know, the sites, so tickets might still come in. A site might go hard down at 7:00 at night.
Yep.
You know, so there were on call, like we would go through an on call rotation, but there at the end, you know, it was just two of us. So it was a week on, week off.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, it's the nature of the business, but it's a different kind of work than the 9 to 5 that a lot of people experience. Although I'm finding out that that's actually pretty rare for most people too.
And I'm not trying to say that not any other job has its own challenges. I think every job has its. Yeah.
I didn't mean to imply it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I didn't want to. So anyway,
cool. Nice.
So what all have I missed in the last long time? First off, I want to say thank you to our community, especially in Discord, for staying alive. And keeping the hobby going. I have been, you know, looking over periodically and checking to see if people are still talking, so that's nice to see. There was a fellow reached out over email for a link to the Discord because our website link is busted. I need to fix that. So hopefully within the next week or two, I'll get on the website and get that fixed. I also got to clean up the website. We've still got bots making accounts, even though I've turned off all that ability. But I also want to thank specifically our patrons who are still signed up and contributing. I know this has been a more quiet period, but thank you for your continued support.
Yeah, thank you guys so very much. I absolutely agree with that. I wanted to, before you get too far down that road, I want to make sure that I'm in. Yeah, it's been a big thanks to anybody who's been supporting us as we kind of had slowed down for a minute. Mm-hmm. It's been a big help, emotionally and otherwise.
Yeah, I think we're at a point where we can start sitting down and recording and discussing more. I'm not in a position where there's going to be a lot of fly stuff. Just because I crashed all my stuff at Flight Fest, save for my FT Edge and the Vulture that's up on the wall. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I may be able to get out and fly the Edge a little bit, but my focus is going to be work, trying to get this stuff done. So I'm not going to get the house ready. So I'm not going to be building, and I know once I get to the apartment, there's not going to be room for it for a while, so it's going to be a little bit yet before we get into the next house, and I'm in a position to start building up again.
That's okay. You can oogle. We can still talk techniques. You know what I mean?
Well, it might be a time that I start hitting the simulator more.
Yeah. There you go. That's a really good idea. Oh, man, I almost forgot about that.
Sim parties again.
Right?
So, what all have I missed?
You've missed a lot and not a whole lot at the same time, it feels like. Yeah. I don't even know where to begin. I think the last time I talked about what I was doing, I had flown the F-18. God, I hope I got it right because it's been a minute. The F-18 that Sam has, now I'm blanking on what he calls it. Oh my God, it's been forever. It's sitting next to me, and it's done up like the Blue Angels.
No, okay.
And I lost a canopy and a battery, which wasn't attached. It was there for ballast. And I was going to make a cockpit. I was going to make it out of clear stuff that, you buy a packet, something from the deli, and it comes in a PETG.
Now, when you say Sam, you're referencing...
Sam Platt.
Okay.
That's right. Hangar RC. He calls the Wasp. That's what he calls it. And I remember it was funny because I was on, I posted my thing, kind of what I built and kind of just say, man, I'm so sad I didn't build this earlier because it's a really good flyer. It's a great size airplane. It's a lot of fun. It looks great. And it's easy to build, right? It's not terribly complex. You're not sitting there with an EDF motor and trying to come on, baby, get off the ground. And once you get off, once they're those, we'll call the Master Series, where everything's curved and beautiful. Mm-hmm. They typically they fly, I'll call heavy. And once they get going, they're great. EDFs are generally that way. This is prop driven. And you could make it EDF, but the prop driven, it gives it its oomph right away. And, you really just kind of, it just comes out of the hand like a dream. And anyways, one of the other guys, on the FT forums, I can't remember what is Samuel something or other. And he's like, what? Oh, that looks great. What's this? And he's like, do you mind if do you have the plans? Or I'm like, well, look, it's Sam Platts. He always had the plans for free. I can give you the PDF. And I passed him the PDF. And I swear to God, within about 3 days, he had his built. Or a week. I was like, holy geez, But his looked great. He did a great job putting it together. And of course, that got a lot more visibility. And, and Sam's like, look, I've still got all the cut files. If somebody wants, if you really, really want me to cut out a kit, I'm not going to put all the barbecue skewers and all the metal and all the other stuff, but I will cut you out a plan, I'll cut you out a kit and I'll send it if you need. Just, email him. Because right now he's doing a lot of RC crawler stuff. I ended up actually getting a chance to catch up with him. And that,
How is he doing?
That side of the business, he's doing really good. His family's doing excellent. He had just come back from a really great lake trip where they took their boat and had a blast out in I was like, that's a postcard. He's like, no, man, that's the lake. I'm like, no, are you sure you're not just sending me a postcard picture? He's like, no, that's exactly what the lake looks like from every angle all the time. It's fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. It was beautiful. I'll see if I can pass that to you when I get a moment here. And so he just come back from that and it was kind of talking and I was just like, well, how's business? How's life? How's this? So like I said, his family's doing great. And, he's kind of pushing along and he's like, look, if you ever need you want to talk, because I had just, consequently started looking at making an unusual body for an RC car. Cause, Amy's, oldest daughter came up to town. And she was talking, she's like, oh, RC cars might be more my speed. These planes are a little bit too much because we all went flying and Amy flew her stuff and I flew mine. And that's where I crashed the Wasp. Not crashed it, but it was unbalanced. So I had to bring it down on the beans and I talked about it last time. Anyway, so we're talking about making a Wienermobile, but she was talking earlier about, which is, I'm like, oh my God, that's the best idea we need to do. And of course, meanwhile, and this is going to get into what I've been doing a lot of in the last couple, since last month or so. So she was like, oh, RC cars might be my style, but I don't like the race cars. I really kind of like the weird looking vehicles, like those Unimog, European trucks or the Chinese trucks. I'm like, you mean like this thing? I brought it up because, Logan has one that he really likes and he kind of enjoys it, but for the most part, he's like, I don't know, so I brought it out and she's like, oh my God, that's it. That's the thing. And so we pulled it out and we just ended up tooling around the yard with some RC cars in the driveway and stuff for a little bit. And We just had some fun, and she's like, "Oh my god, you know what would be the best? The Wienermobile. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could just like make a Wienermobile body?" I'm like, "Oh, I got a great idea," you know. And so in the meantime, you know, Ethan left his when he came through. I think I mentioned that he left his hot wire cutter. Although I was already building my own, and I've got the wire out. I'm going to make a little bit bigger one than I think than he's got, so I can cut out 4-foot sections. I think right now his can do 3.5 foot pieces, which is plenty big. But I was thinking if I could do, for a couple different reasons, if I could do a 4-foot section, I can kind of cut half a sheet of 2-inch extruded polystyrene and kind of cut it into a shape. And that's a pretty good sized bird. So anyway, so let's talk about that, and we're talking about what we could and what we couldn't do. I'm like, oh, we could do the hot wire cutter. All we can do is cut out the shape. We'll kind of resize it. We'll do it out of foam board. We'll use the aluminum foil around the edge and burnish it. And if you don't know, burnishing is basically rubbing it with a smooth piece of metal so that it smooths out what you've got. It kind of mushes the metal around so it smooths it.
Okay.
So and then you attach that to your foam on either side or both sides or whatever. It depends on how you're like, if you're cutting a foam section wing, like I've got, I'm going to show Joe right here. If you've got that, you have to put like your foil section on either end, like the taper. If it's you get the small on one end and small on the bigger one on the other, and then you run it along so you're hitting the spots evenly as you go around the profile.
All right.
And then you end up creating the pretty, and this isn't perfect. I could have used an extra hand. I did it by myself, which you can do. I probably should have had an extra hand though. And you have one person, and this is a technique that's used in most of the Rutan home kit build, full-size airplanes, right? Like when you have a kit like the Cozy or the Very Easy, Very Vegan, almost everything that he's ever freaking designed pretty much goes this way. So when you're building the wings, you hot wire cut the actual section out of foam, and then you apply composites on top of it to give it the strength. The foam gives support to the composite so it doesn't buckle, and it gives it extra strength along the way. But you can use the same techniques to do what he's doing on a larger scale, where you're talking like 3 or 4 foot wing. You can do with RC with a small foam extruded polystyrene, right? Same deal, just smaller. And you're not just, instead of using like a big 8-inch or 20 by 10-inch float billet, you basically, you're shrinking it all down for scale modeling. Anyway, so if you do it properly, the skin that's left on that XPS foam doesn't need any sanding. It's ready for the pre-epoxy treatment and pre-fiberglass, and you can fiberglass it and be done. So I was thinking, if we made the body for the Wienermobile and extrude the shape and kind of shape it a little bit with with some shaping tools, which a rasp and maybe some files, some sandpaper, we can get the shape. We can fine tune some of the intimate details, and we can cover it with like Bondo, and then exactly what oh my god, I'm blanking on it, and I've got Red Jensen. Exactly what Red was talking about. He's like, okay, now you got your plug, so you get it with a good hard shell, then you wax it like 16 layers of wax. You do a PVA. It's actually 6. It's 4 to 6 layers of, but it's like car wax. You rub it on, you rub it off. Okay, that's 1 layer. Let it dry for a little bit. Okay, 15 minutes gone by, I'll do it again. You just keep doing that until you've got a hard shell, basically, that's wax. And then you do PVA spray, which is a mold release agent. And then you do, what is that stuff? Gel coat. You put gel coat down, and then you put epoxy and resin and all that stuff, and you vacuum bag it. And the vacuum bag sucks out all the excess resin, so it's a ratio of about 60 to 40% resin to fiberglass. I think that was the ratio, depending on the kind you're working with. And then now I've got a mold of that original plug. Now we can take that same plug and do, like they'd make a cowl, was basically vacuum forming. And then, of course, now you have a thin, flexible shell, which is perfect for RC cars. And if you bust it, that's okay. You got a plug. You can just make another one. Just go, whoop. And then, so I was thinking we could do both of those techniques. One creates a fiberglass shell, which is a little bit more durable, and you could do a lot more paint-wise with it, I think. But it gave us options to try, but it was also kind of like, to me, a good excuse to start trying some of the fiberglass methods for RC planes with, kind of on a relatively small scale. And, if it gets goofed up, it's not the end of the world. Like, I'm not trying to fly it in the air. It's just on a car. Mm-hmm. If it looks sort of like a Wienermobile, I'll be pleased as punch. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? So I was thinking that would be a perfect thing to do. So I also have been looking at building there's so much. So that's one thing. I told you there was nothing and I lied, apparently. But I think you knew that.
Of course.
Well, so I got the hot rod cutter up and running. So I decided to make a bunch of airfoils. Now I had I think it's a 5th scale quickie. So one of the home built models, I've been looking at a bunch of different ones that have been around, and I've just fallen in love. And it's probably the worst idea in general, but I've fallen in love with the Rutan's. I think he originally called it the quickie, and then it was a single seater, and it had almost very little power consumption, and it went really fast, and it was very efficient fuel wise. It was like the sports car of the home built world, right? And then so a lot of people are like, well, it's cool that it's 1-seater, but boy, it sure is nice to have 2 people when you're going somewhere. And the whole point of going fast is to go somewhere. So well, what if we made a 2-seater? And so somebody kind of, and he might have drawn something up, and then I don't even know if that's English. And then somebody kind of put it together, and then they made a kit, and they called it the Q2. And then I think they used a very common, very accessible half VW engine, which called a RevMaster D, I think, RevMaster 2. I don't have any of the stats in front of me, so I'm trying to remember it. And then I think people kind of liked it. They really liked it, but they thought, well, what if we had a more like a little bit stronger aircraft engine, one that's not as heavy. Not that the RevMaster's terrible, but it's not designed for aircraft specifically. So originally wasn't. Okay. I think. So they said, well, what if we just put a Continental O200, which is 100 horsepower instead of 68, and that apparently cooks with gasoline. It's fantastic, actually, with avgas. So a lot of people are like, oh my God, this is the dream, right? This is what everybody loves. So there's a couple different versions. And a while back, I had a bead on, well, we'll see where things go. But right now, I have a bead on one of the original 80s kits for the Quickie 2, the Q2, with a RevMaster. And the guy has the RevMaster engine. It's basically, he bought a kit to do something else. So he was going to make a hot rod because he's like, dude, this body looks sleek and fast. It would be awesome as a hot rod, right? Which it probably would. And, but then he's like, yeah, I kind of feel bad taking this whole thing apart as a kit, it's like the whole kit. So maybe I should see if I can find, I got to clear out space anyway. I've got other projects I want to do. Let me see if I can sell this. And so we talked, and unfortunately we talked right as school was starting, and I don't have any time to do anything really about that time. So we connected, but he unfortunately had to go work on, he has rental properties in Florida or something like that. So he had to go. And so he's not going to get back home he was thinking only a couple months, but he's like, yeah, I think we're going to stay. He and his wife, I guess they're going to stay and kind of vacation while they're there, kind of renovating the property. I think they already did it. So they're just kind of hanging and enjoying it, or they're still working.
Why not?
Right. I mean, look, that's the whole point of why you have the property, right? Like, so I can't fault the guy. So he's going to be back in like January or whatever, but it's, it's in Pittsburgh. It's going to be quite a drive, but, it's possible that I'll start, in the beginning of next year. I'm going to purchase myself a kit plane and get started and see what I can do. In the meantime, I figured I can take this up until Christmas and see about kind of honing some of the techniques. Giving some of the tests and some of the techniques using on RC planes. Like I'm going to build a scale version of the Quickie, maybe not perfectly to scale, in the sense like I'm not going to put in all the pull wires and all that kind of stuff and attach it to, little sticks and little rudder pedals. And although that would be pretty awesome. So I might, but I think I'm just going to use I'm going to work on the composite techniques, how to build things with the composites and see if I can get the kind of finish I'm looking for, or what it takes to get the finish I'm looking for on a small scale, the way they describe that you should do with a bigger scale, and see if it kind of pans out. Cause it should. I mean, if all is said and done, it should. So I'm kind of excited about that. That's kind of exciting. I also re-upped my medical license, or my medical certificate for my private pilot license. So I'm heading back to that realm of the world, and I'm going to see what I can do. If I can get things scheduled on a regular, I should be able to make some serious headway by early next year. Yes, I'm planning on that. That was something that happened that's pretty exciting. I feel like I finally got off my duff and got that taken care of. So, I've got a bunch of things set up to start building that half scale Quickie, or the fifth scale Quickie. It's going to have like normally the plane has a 16-foot wingspan or 18, depending on which version you're looking at. And this one has a 4-foot wingspan. So it's about a quarter scale, I think. So I was hoping to, kind of make a fun little deal. Oh, while somewhere in that last month, I was talking to Leon over at the Ultralight Workshop YouTube channel, and he and I we were literally sitting in some of his. He has, we have like the build parties.
Yeah.
So they have what they call hangar flying. And so hangar flying is basically like, okay, we're not actually flying, it's like too late or whatever, but we're all going to get together and talk airplanes. So during one of the things we were talking about a bunch of the different composites, I said, one of the difficult parts about it is like, I'm looking at these structures and they don't really go into much detail as to how to calculate them. Like, how do you determine how many layers of what you need, right? Like I can figure out the moment of inertias. I'm a structural engineer. So understanding how to parse out the loads and determine like, hey, this part here is going to see this much load, but how do I determine what that means for how many layers of material, right? And what combos. And so he's like, oh my God, yeah, there's a book. It's called this. It's a really good one. It's easy to digest, and it might just help you at least understand it, if nothing else, and kind of understand. And it was good because it read through the whole book. It's called Composite Aircraft Designed by Martin Holman. And it's an older book, I guess came out mid to late 80s when the home-built fiberglass craze was running amok with the rattan designs and all that kind of stuff. But it really does go into exactly what I was looking for. So it's really great to look through it. I'm sure I have a structure book that I think will cover it as well, but it is deep in and a lot less easy to digest. So I was kind of excited to have him. He sent it to me. Thank you very much, Leon. If you're listening, I really appreciate it. He knows that as well. But it was really neat because it kind of goes into, why certain mixtures are important. I mean, if you listen to all these guys talk about fiberglassing who are making full scale planes, like they're making a cozy, I'm going to link a couple videos. And they're like, you got to mix, and you got to mix them all because you're getting the ratio, and the ratio has to be fully mixed. If there's unmixed resin, it's not actually doing anything, and you have to keep mixing. The second you stop mixing, if it's in that quart container, that's too much material in one space, and it starts to thermoset. So it'll start to react, creating heat, thereby setting it faster. So every second you have it in that container is seconds you're losing to work with, right? So it might set in 30 minutes, but if you sit it in your hand for 15 seconds, waiting to pour it out onto your flat surface, you're losing like 10 minutes. You're losing a lot more time than you think by letting it set in the pot. So instead, second you're done mixing, you were ready, and you just pour it out right when you're done mixing, and you pour it where you want it to be, and then you just kind of flick it and spread it, and then once it'll kind of settle and spread, and you have more time than you think, even though it's like a fast hardener, and you have more time because when it's out flat, it's going to set slower than if it's in a pot. And so they're kind of, I think when they determine the times, they kind of assume that it's, I guess you're taking time to get it from the pot to the surface. So if you're smart, you get it out right away and you have more working time than you think. So I'm curious, I'm really excited to see, to test that, to see kind of where that is. So that was pretty cool. So I've really been doing a lot of, I'll call it armchair research from watching YouTube videos about people doing the composites. I've been reading the books. I've got a couple wing sections ready to start because I was going to do, XPS is kind of the base of a lot of these these airplanes that are the build at home kit planes. They'll have that XPS billet, which is basically just float material. Same kind of stuff you have that's pink or blue or whatever. Same XPS, I think 2 pound or 4 pound per cubic foot. And then I'm going to see how it goes, right? And they said that basically to connect them, if you use micro bubbles, that's for contouring and for looks. So it's to basically lay a contoured surface for the fiberglass to set so it doesn't create an air bubble, because that's what you don't want. But if you want to structurally connect something, you use cotton fiber and epoxy, and that's called flocks. And then you put that on the ends of the XPS and you bring it together, and you tape them so they're squished, and you remove as much material as you reasonably can. And then once that sets, it is all set. I think there's a thing you have to prepare the surface with, which is micros and epoxy. And the micro basically are just little micro glass beads. I think Red definitely talked about it. It's a common thing. So what you're doing is you're basically filling most of the voids with air in your epoxy to make it as light as possible. And what you're doing is squeegeeing it into the XPS to create, when it dries, it creates a solid surface. Okay. Yeah, and it's also a surface of epoxy. Epoxy bonds to epoxy well. So once you have that, and that micro is kind of embedded into the fibers of the XPS, now you have a great bonding surface that won't kind of come off. And then at that point, you can put your fiberglass down, put your glass on, and then create that perfect resin mixture. Now, one of these ladies, and this is a technique I started, I did it small scale, and I'm looking forward to trying it again with the wings on a bigger scale. But she talked about, and she one of the people, I guess, who runs Cozy Girls. She's built a bunch of cozies by Rutan, similar kind of plane. It's home built, big, lots of epoxying on foam, and you basically 2 layers of bidirectional. And so what she does, instead of saying, because that's what I was always, Red talked about it. He's like, well, you got to have a layer down of plastic. And then you got, and again, I'm paraphrasing. I think he says all the details of what he needs. And matter of fact, the video at the end with the pictures that he gave us, they're great. They're a great reference. And it's the traditional epoxy method, which is, put your base on a piece of plastic. You layer all the fiberglass down. You make sure you have that bead. You have a vacuum valve. You have to have a vacuum pump. maybe even you have to have an input chamber for the epoxy to come in. And then you have that little spiral stuff so that it has like a feeding valve or a feeding vein for it to come in. Your part has to have the epoxy glass, however many layers, usually 2. But then you've got to put your peel ply, your bleeder material, the little veins of that little corkscrew stuff so that there's an air passage to get out to the vacuum part. And then you need another piece of flexible plastic that goes on top and a seal that goes like a rubberized gasketed seal that goes around the whole thing, making sure it's perfectly airtight, which is hard to get. And and then when you're done, everything, I'm trying to think, everything but maybe the bleeder material gets thrown away. Like almost 100% of that process gets tossed. And that always I'm like, wow, that's a lot. It's a lot of, I mean, most of it's relatively cheap material because it is expendable. But at the same point, it's like, really? All that stuff? And so she's like, look, okay, you're going to need peel ply, but you don't need a big vacuum bag. You don't need a gasket. Well, you can get away without it. No, so this lady talks about basically putting down saran wrap. And you know how saran wrap clings to itself. Mm-hmm. And same with the big rolls that go around like palleting. It's the same stuff. Just on a thicker, wider roll, right? She says, get that stuff.
That's a thicker material, but yeah.
Yeah, it is a little bit, but it's still really thin and still, we'll call it stretchable, and it has the cling, right? So right. She says, look, put the stuff down, put your stuff on, get your epoxy mix like you normally do, put your peel ply down, but you don't need all that bleeder cloth and all that stuff. Get the cheapest paper towels you can. Use something that's very similar to an aquarium. She's like, I call it the Lovac system. Again, I'm putting a link. It's a long video, but there's so many nuggets of wisdom in the midst of it. I feel like I need to write down, once I try them, I need to write down the nuggets of wisdom in one big list. We can go through it in more detail after I try it. So you basically use like an aquarium pump. So it's like low, diaphragm pump. It's not high vacuum or anything, but you put the tube on the intake side, right? Instead of the output, which is usually what you put in the aquarium. It's not an aquarium pump, because I've had people tell me, but I use my aquarium pump and it works. If you, if it has one of the in nipples and out nipples to put that hose on, you can just put it on the intake as opposed to the out, and it works perfect. I don't have an intake. I have kind of like a hole, but I saran wrapped it and it worked. It created enough of a vacuum. Anyway, you wrap paper towel around the end of the tube. You make sure that that's touching the paper towel that you put over top of your peel ply. And then you put another layer of the saran wrap over top, and you just sort of let it kind of float down on top. And when you're ready to get it to suck in and vacuum, you just tap it in a couple spots, and then the air will kind of flutter out, and then all the saran wrap will start attaching to itself because it's at a cling to itself. And then you take where the hose is and you roll it back and forth a little bit, and that will static cling and create a vacuum around the tube, which is like the hardest part apparently. And now you've got a vacuum around a seal around the entire piece. And that air pump will slowly but surely suck out all the air. And it's not going to be a high vacuum, but you don't need it to be. It's enough to push the resin out of the way. And that cheap paper towel is going to get thrown out anyway. But it's enough paper towel to suck up the excess epoxy. Because you're not sitting there putting too much extra to begin with. And she goes, I can't tell you how many we've built like this. It works. And so what are you throwing out? You have the peel ply you got to get rid of anyway. Like, you have to use it. It really works. It's worth the money. But everything else, like the cheap paper towels, are 10 times cheaper than bleeder cloth. The saran wrap costs a lot less than all that heavy mill plastic, and the gasket material you don't need. Like, it really makes a big difference. And she goes, it'll cut your cost down by a ton. That saran wrap material is pennies on the dollar. It's give it a try. You'll be surprised. So I'm looking forward to actually trying it with these wings that I cut out. I had to do a lot more sanding with these than I thought. And as I'm looking down, it looks like there's a little bit of a twist. That wasn't on purpose.
Yeah, I was just about to say, how did you get that twist in there?
Yeah, not on purpose. That's how. Because I don't know what I'm
doing
doing.
Prandtls on a
I know, right?
cutter.
Well, I mean, that's easy enough to kind of do by accident. Let me see. This is the thick end. Yeah, I don't think I have the same kind of twist on there. A little bit. Yeah, it'll be interesting. The plane's going to go all wonky. It'll be fun. I don't know. I've also been looking at, in that same kind of vein of what could I use a hot wire cutter for. I found an aircraft that I am just, it's one of those foot launch gliders. So in some of the earlier days of, like in the Californias, there's a whole soaring society that covers the history of gliding. It's fantastic. Maybe I'll see if I can put a link to that. But basically, one of the guys came up with, it's like this weird, it's like a T-tail, but it's a V-shaped T-tail. So it has the V-tail controls with a really long, slender, like glider wing. And then there's this weird little duck body. And that's where you basically, you sit in with the thing over your shoulders and you run down the hill. And as you start to actually get speed, you pull your feet up and tuck them in the goose body, right? And then there's like this slender, we'll call it little beak that goes to a canard. And the canard's maybe a third of the length of the wing, right? And it's called Calibri is one of the versions of it. That's not the one I really like, because I think the Calibri is only like a T-tail almost, or T-wing. I think the one I've been looking at is here it is. It's a Bouchard Canard, a Boucher. I think that guy's French. I don't know. Canard 2FL. It's Avia Fiber was a company they ended up creating to build this. And I think the owner ended up having a crash. But I was thinking for like a half or third scale model, it'd be a lot of fun. Again, ways to try out these composite techniques that I'm reading about, right? So yeah, it's a weird looking, it's really cool looking. Let's see if I can show Joe on my phone.
That is weird, yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird, but I'll tell you what, it's really cool. I want to see how it flies. So I thought that would be a good excuse to like take the long sheets of 8-foot XPS foam and just use the hot wire to cut out like 3 or 4 wings, and just, again, using those methods, seeing how they work, seeing the benefits and drawbacks and how hard or easy it is, that kind of stuff. And then using the similar techniques that I'm reading about for the kit plane so I can get familiar and confident with those techniques. So that way when the kit plane does come, one, I can get to it, but more importantly, I can do it with confidence. So as crazy as that is. But I can also use a lot of those ideas and some of that information to, I'm pointing over to the aircraft carrier, the larger scale aircraft carrier, that the one wing that's left from it. Yeah. I'm curious. I want to do that. And there's a lot of different ways to get that done. And that's one of the methods I was thinking about. So, most of it's been research, and I'm hoping that this coming month I'll be able to apply some of what I've learned. So yeah, it's not a whole lot as far as flying is concerned. But it has been a pretty interesting thing to start delving into a new technique set, a new tool set that we can have to make RC airplanes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so what are you looking forward to when you get a chance to make more, right? When you're at that point where you've found a house and you're like, okay, I've got a shop, I've got my thing, I got a little spot to build.
Yeah. So I've got 2 A10 kits that are just sitting there waiting.
2 kits?
2 of them. Got one from Flight Fest last year, I believe. Yeah, because I took the Edge last year. So got last year and then picked up another this year. So I have not built those yet because I want to build them. I had not built the first one because I want to do it as an EDF. And then the second one, obviously, because I knew I needed to be winding this place down. So I've got 2, and I do want to build those as EDFs. And then I've still got all this Depron sitting here. So
yeah, man.
I got plans to do some Depron builds. Hopefully, when I get up there, I have taken the 3D printer down, but I'll build it back and hopefully get some better results the next time I put it together, where I can actually print consistently. If not, I may just have to bite the bullet and pick up a Bamboo Labs or something. And then, have fun with those projects and get a Spitfire built again and just, get back into it.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it for you.
Me too. I've already got a standing invitation to one of the fields up there. I got to look the guy up and find out which field he hangs at. And then, we'll just be an hour apart. So it'll be a lot easier to.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward. Together. Yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to get together on a weekend. And it's like, you want to meet at my field or yours?
An all-day thing just for the driving.
Right? That's what it always felt like. It's like, again, awesome, worth it. Just, it's something you can't do all the time is all. Yeah. And so that's something that I thought was, I found, I'm not sure I can do, but it's another one of those things where you're like, I know I shouldn't. But boy, oh boy, do I want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's a quick way to lose a lot of money. We'll see.
You can't go out that window.
Right?
She fussing at me now.
Yeah, now. Heck, you can't tell me. I do what I want.
That one, yes.
Right?
Anyway.
Nice. Well, good.
Well, I think that's pretty good for this kind of getting back together and talking. Not really a main topic other than catching up and thanking for people for staying engaged and staying involved. And just
really appreciate it.
Hopefully, this will be us back on the every other week thing. I guess I'm going to have to get the simulator fired up so I got something to talk about and be practicing some skills or something, since I'm not going to be really going out and flying probably. I got a buddy I might convince to go fly the Edge with me.
Okay.
We'll see.
I can only encourage that.
I know. But yeah, back ready to get back into the flow of it all. And to our listeners, if there's ideas that you have for the show that you'd like to put forward as far as where the show goes from here, aside from just us continuing to do our normal thing, feel free to reach out and drop us a line on what you're thinking, what you'd be interested in.
So when I'm looking at a lot of the analytics, it seems like people are very interested in hearing what we've been up to, and I'm not sure how much the topics are of interest. Sometimes I wonder, and so I'm always curious to hear. Are we just missing the topics you want to hear about, or if we have a direction that we should probably take the podcast towards? We're all ears. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I know there's been the suggestion of, I guess, a following of the journey as we progress further than where we are. I think that's going to be a little bit longer before we could attempt that, because I got to get up there and get established. And, hopefully I get to Raleigh, it'll be you and me more able to fly. I'd be around people that are flying more. then I'll have a bigger drive to go and do the things.
Yeah, it's always a better incentive when you're,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you have people like, come on, let's go fly. You're like, oh, right. Yeah. Let me get
let's go
that
do
plane
the
that
thing.
I kind of put off to the side. It's going to take a second and then I'll have that up in the air. Yeah. It's good. Nice.
And if nothing else, at least I get up there and unpack the stuff. I can get back into the electronic sides of it. I was packing some stuff up and came across the LED board that I tried to wire up 2 flight fests ago, and yeah.
I remember it. You were doing your own kind of frustrating, like, what the heck is going on here? It's not doing the thing, and I'm sitting there doing my own on the build part of it. It's like, why is this not doing what it's supposed to do?
Yeah, and even as I looked at how I wired it up, I was like, I fought that so hard, but I could have just soldered it differently, and it would have probably gone a lot easier. So there's some of that, but yeah.
Well,
mostly I was trying to jump solder between like 2 points that are like a quarter inch apart, and in my mind there had to be a wire. Yeah. Instead of just doing a solid line of solder connecting dots to the point.
Gotcha. Yeah. When it really can be just solder. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. Especially the volts and amps that would be pulling.
Yeah. Right. Very, very little. Nice.
So.
Well, cool. Look, I'm glad we got a chance to really catch up. And I'm sorry I didn't realize I had more than I expected. More exciting things for me.
That's fine.
I feel like they're, composites. This is a new area I've been looking forward to getting into. So, being this close, I guess, is pretty exciting to me. But yeah, get some fancy looking planes.
Well, are you thinking about putting your Ethan interview in here still, or are you?
Yeah. I'll make a quick transition, some sort of transitional thing, and then just have that connect the audio, and then I'm going to ask you right now if you could close it out, and then you do the thing. And then I'll tack that on the end.
Okay, you're gonna put Ethan after this.
Yeah, and then like I said, we'll do the closeout. I'll move the closeout to the end. All right, don't go away, folks. In a brief minute, I'm going to be sitting down to talk with Ethan Jacobs, who is the creator of the anti-aircraft gun replica that was seen at Flight Fest 2024. I talked to him a lot about how he came up with the idea, what he put together, and how things went, and where the project might head in the future. So stay tuned. All right. Hey, everybody. This is, I'm in a small conversation here with Ethan Jacobs. He is also known as Mutley. He is, I've heard him being called the Flight Fest missile guy, among other things. He is my builder in arms buddy who builds all the crazy fun things along with some things that I do. This year, he'll probably be known as the builder of the anti-aircraft ice gun. Please welcome Ethan Jacobs to the show. Ethan, we've talked to you before because you and I, we camp together when we're at Flight Fest, don't we?
Yeah. I think it's like it's going on 3-4 years.
Yeah, pretty much
3 or 4 times. Yeah. I like all the projects you do, so it's easy to camp next to you because there's always something interesting going on that I like to see.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like when we were in the forums often when we were kind of early in the hobby, we'd watch each other build the craziest things. And then I remember the one Flight Fest, I was just kind of walking past. I'm like, wait a second, you're the guy who did that thing, and I'm holding mine, and you're like, wait, you're the guy who did that thing.
Yeah. I remember the Prandtl wing. I remember you showing me the Prandtl wing, and I latched onto that because I was like, I remember that from that video,
I know
the documentary, the NASA thing, and
I feel like if I was smart, I'd just build a bunch and put those what are those the old B-Pack motor systems because they're just solid, and then put them on the back and I give them to everybody. Just say you fly it. And see what I'm talking about. It's gonna be great. Unfortunately, I can never seem to get mine working. I guess it's because I've got mine doesn't push hard enough. Um, anyway, but this year, like I said, this year you did something special, a little bit beyond the normal. Look at my giant plane, which you did, which I know you did. You built a Tupolev, right?
Yeah, I brought it. I didn't finish it. I was trying to finish it there, but I got way too wrapped up in
Yeah.
the ammo melting and causing all the delays for
Well, yeah.
the
Let's
special
talk about the
project that I brought.
right.
What
So
was
the
it?
Tupolev, though, originally, like I remember watching you build it. You're kind of using your hot wire cutter.
Yeah,
How
yeah. So
big was that supposed to be?
it's supposed to be like a 12-foot wingspan, and instead of using like foam
Dang.
board, I found a guy. I think a guy in Dade City had these 5-inch thick 4x8 styrofoam white XPS
Dang.
styrofoam sheets, and he only wanted $20 a sheet. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a deal. Because I mean, it was like 30
Right.
bucks at Home Depot or something
Right.
for
At
the two
least.
inch wide. Yeah. So I went to Goodwill. I bought an $8 laptop charger. I bought like I think a $10 blow dryer and took both
Mm-hmm.
apart and then created a frame with some 1x2 furring strips and some turnbuckles and some
Yeah.
little alligator clips. And then I had a nichrome wire that heated up real hot, and I just took my bandsaw, cut out I had some sheets of fiberglass epoxy sheets that I got
Mm-hmm.
from an old project at work, and just cut out some profiles, and then cut each wing section. Did the taper, did the chamfer, cut out each wing section, the two root sections, and then two tip sections, and then glued them
Yeah.
together with Gorilla Glue. And I found some carbon tubes and just kind of lined them up to strengthen the XPS styrofoam there. And
Right.
then, sure enough, the fuselage, I used circles and just kind of did a hot wire circle and made
Right.
long tubes and glued them together and wrapped my own sockets. I think I took like
Yeah.
Elmer's glue and sockets and kind of made a little carbon tube socket joint for the wings and the
Right.
fuselage and everything. And it's almost done. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
couple more
I
hours.
remember
It'll
you
be
like
finished.
if I got time, you'll be able to pull it together. So I hope. Look, if you are listening and you like any of the things that we've mentioned so far, you did the 200% Betty Bomber
Yeah.
the other year too. That
Yep.
did
13th
did a great job.
Squadron. These go to the
Mm-hmm.
13th Squadron Betty Bomber. Blew up Jack's design 200%. That flew great. Flew
Right,
amazing.
because that was like 10 foot. Like it was already 5 feet or something, right? So you built it,
Yeah, I
made it
think
into a 10 foot.
it was 55 inches was the normal scale he had on his site, and then the blown up ones was 110-inch wingspan.
Yeah.
And
That yeah. So if you're familiar, just keep a lookout because I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of that because I know you're like you kind of had to put it to the back burner because you did something that most people we'll call kind of dream of or like you have to kind of have one of those like you have a farm where you have people with you have your fall festival there and people have their weddings at your place and all that stuff so you build like a chunking cannon or of like pumpkins or whatever, right? Or and I know they featured a guy with an apple chucker.
yeah,
But you ended up doing something far you were doing something that you wanted to scale, basically a scale AA gun, right?
yeah,
Is that what you
yeah,
ended up building? Tell me
yeah.
more about it.
So, I got inspired by the Flight Fest guys' Apple Cannon versus the B-17 episode. And one guy, I think last year, I think his name was Chad, he put a paintball gun on one of those big wheel electric trucks, and he was shooting at planes in combat on the last combat on the last day. And I was inspired because my 8-year-old nephew Gerald and my 4-year-old nephew Huey they were interested in doing combat at Flight Fest, but they're too young. Gave them some planes, as you know, 8-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the skill level, that's kind of young to get a plane in combat there.
Yeah.
So I saw a World War II video of a gun crew on board, I think the battleship New Jersey or something, some battleship
Mm-hmm.
during Battle of Midway or Guadalcanal. They were shooting down incoming torpedo bombers, and there's a bunch of teamwork, people bringing rounds around, people, cranking on the azimuth, cranking on the elevation, the pointing and the training. And I was like, wow, what if I made basically a potato launcher similar to that episode, but you had a coordinated gun crew effort where you have somebody, turning the thing left and right, the other kid turning it up and down. How
Right. It
cool
was
would
a
that be to get
azimuth
them to
and
participate?
declination. Is that what it was?
Yeah. So in the research I did, the left and right was I think it was the training, and the up and down was the pointing.
Okay.
Um, So one guy on each side of the gun was responsible for left or right and up and down. Um, so the design that I did was based on the single barrel 40 millimeter Bofors anti-aircraft gun that was, I think it was fielded like 1937. I'd have to search Wikipedia to get the number. It was late 30s from Sweden, and I wanted to make it the size that like a 70-pound kid or maybe an 8-year-old, 8 to 12-year-old kid maybe
Yeah.
could get on
Size of your
and fly
nephews.
that. Yeah, my nephews, and
Right.
get them to participate in combat at Flight Fest without having to, you know, have a
Have
plane up
mad
there.
skills at flying things, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Why should the threat in the air? Why should there only be a threat in the air? There should also be a threat from the ground, I think, in those combat events. And
Yeah.
it took a long time to build. I went through a couple iterations. I guess the biggest thing was I wanted to make sure, since I was going to bring it all the way there, that it was going to work reliably. So I had to
Right.
kind of tweak the handles and get the gears and the handles to be very durable. I wound up testing it probably 3 or 4 times. I think your kids tested it twice.
Right.
I know
Yeah. They
Logan.
tested the mechanism twice. And I think my youngest and I tested it live fire testing, the
Yeah,
one
we
of
did
those two
a
times.
training. We did a training scenario where we exercised tested the feasibility in combat. And I think we got what? We got a hit after like what, 22 shots?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we got a couple close ones and one hit at the very
Yeah,
and it was like, man, how many bullets do we go through? And we only got this one. It was
I
way
think
harder
my
than we
hands were
thought.
frozen by the end of the attack there.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say is the ideal crew for that? Because I know you designed it for two, but I think what we were realizing is that to really you almost have to have like 3 or 4 people. Like how many people did the original gun have as
I
the
think
full
the
crew?
original gun crew had about 16 people.
Holy cow. Oh my god.
I don't quote me on that because I haven't looked at the Wikipedia page in a while, but I know our gun, the thing I brought to Flight Fest, I found out that I think if 4 people were on the team, that would be best, because I noticed that when the kids were aiming for certain planes during the combat, the kid on the left that was pointing left and right would aim at something very far to the left, and the kid that was on the right seat pointing up and down, he would point at a plane very high. So both kids were looking at different planes, and
Oh wow, yeah.
so you needed some guy in the middle to have like a conductor's baton and point to where the target was and tell both kids, okay, you know, turn it here at this target, and the kid on the right turn, aim it up this target. You
Yep.
needed like a director, like a conductor in a symphony to like kind of get
Right.
it
And then you almost
pointed the
had to
right
have a
way.
separate person to do the firing.
Yep.
Like you had to have an orchestrator and had somebody who's ready to fire and load, right?
Yeah. Fire and load. The you'd have the pointer guy and then the loader shooter. I made it so you could. I made like an extension tube because the firing mechanism was actually a 1-inch diaphragm sprinkler valve, where
Oh, cool.
the top of the thing fills up with air, and then once you release the pressure on the top, the entire diaphragm dumps all the air at once. So it was very efficient. I only had to use 35 to 45 psi in the tank for each shot, and it made a 1.5-inch water-filled ping pong ball or 1.5-inch ice cube go like 300 feet with only like 35 psi. So it was
Wait,
very
how many
efficient.
feet?
like 300 feet at a 45-degree
Jeez.
angle.
Yeah, that's pretty far. I mean, so during combat at Flight Fest, most of the planes are about 100 feet up. So you were
Yeah.
like shooting straight through the whole heart of it if you want, if you
Oh
were doing
yeah,
the ice. But
yeah.
you
The
said
ice rounds are going past all the planes like most of the time.
nice.
But I mean, it's like
S-
trying to shoot at a mosquito. It's like trying to
So
shoot a BB gun at a mosquito. I found it felt like out there with
yeah,
a lot of the planes are small.
yeah, they are pretty small in general. I mean, there were some big ones out there in general, but they usually kind of come down pretty quick. Um, well, I'm looking at the crew. One, two, three, four, five, six. It looks, and then there's like 7 and 8 kind of carrying the next rounds up. So it looks like there's like 8 people manning this one of these guns. Um, it's
I
kind
know
of tough to tell.
I know on most of the battleships they had the quad, they had the 4-barrel
Yeah, they have
ones.
4 barrel. That's the one with the eight people manning it
Yeah,
at
I
least.
must be thinking of the 5-inch guns because I know the 5-inch guns had like 16 people or something like that. I went on the Laffey tour at I think South Carolina.
Yeah, but
They had the
yeah,
boat.
even still, I'm looking at, I mean, a minimum of 4 at least, if not more. And that's not
Yeah,
even counting the people kind of loading the ammo in.
yeah, because you could only load 4 rounds, 4 rounds, and they were shooting at 120 rounds a minute in real life.
Yeah, it's
So I
pretty.
mean, the guy was constantly going back and forth, like picking up four. I think it came in 4 rounds per clip. I think.
Did you ever get a muzzle velocity or anything like that? Like kind of pause a piece of your video in slow mo or something to kind
I
of see how far it went in a certain amount of frames or something?
I did a crude estimation using one of those virtual online ballistic calculators where you
Oh,
can kind
okay.
of aim. It's like
Yeah.
an online applet. You can aim the thing and shoot it. And I was getting the max height was 110 feet if it was aimed at 45 degrees and it was going 300 feet.
Right.
Um, I don't remember the velocity. Uh, I'm guessing it was probably like 200 feet per second.
Nice.
Maybe slightly slower than a paintball.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, considering what it is, I think that's perfect. I mean, you are going to get injured. I mean, you're going to get hurt. You're going to feel it if you get hit by one, obviously.
Oh yeah, I
And
was not going to get hit by one.
yeah, and I think did you put any like I know we talked about you were there the whole time it was being operated, and I know you put a safety on the valve to make sure it couldn't fire when you weren't there. Did you do any kind
Yeah,
of limiters to make sure it didn't get shot, like you couldn't shoot it horizontal or like you
yeah,
could
I
only
put
fire
a
in the forward arc? I know we talked about those things when we were
yeah.
talking.
So the automatic, I had my friend help design an automatic shooter that has like a kill switch in it. The one that I brought to Flight Fest, what I did was at the end of the events, I would unscrew the valve release, uh, that spray valve
Y-
thing that was on top of the release.
Yeah.
I would
So you
I
kind
would
of
take
take the
that
air
off.
pressure out.
Yeah, I would take that off and unhook the scuba tank from it and turn the scuba air off. And there's basically like 2 layers of it wouldn't accidentally go off in somebody's face. And I also, as a last ditch effort, I shoved a white cotton cloth in the front of the barrel. It looked like kind of a
Right.
surrender flag,
Yeah.
just to be safe. Just show people because you
Right.
start swinging that barrel around, it looks a little menacing.
Yeah, it
And make
can.
sure make
No,
sure people feel safe.
now, if I
But
remember right, like when you transport it, you had to disassemble it pretty significantly, right? Like it wasn't
yeah,
just like you kind of threw it on the back of a truck and kind of brought an AA gun down the road.
I some people were saying I should have put it in the back seat of like a Toyota,
Right.
drive it up there, but I didn't want to get pulled over, obviously. So I hid it in the back of my little 4x4x12 RC trailer. What I wound
Right.
up doing is taking the wheels off the chassis and then taking the uprights off the top turret there and then taking the
Hmm.
gun off and kind of laying it all on the side inside the trailer, and that got
Yeah.
to Flight Fest with no issues.
So that was one of your design parameters, is that it kind of had to be disassemblable and
Yeah.
stowable for that. It's not a giant trailer. It's not a small trailer either, because 12 feet long, but it's not like a It's not like a car trailer or anything like that. It's like a small, hobby trailer, which is,
Yeah,
I mean,
yep,
perfect for what you're doing.
yeah. So the trailer I had, it was I think it was 48 inches wide. It was basically the width of a 4x8 plywood sheet. When I designed the like the bearing, like the rotating turret base, I made
Mm-hmm.
sure that it was I think it was 42 inches. I wanted to make sure it
Okay.
could fit inside the trailer and have like 2 inches. I think it
A little
wound
bit
up
of room.
having like yeah, like 1.5 inches on each side.
Yeah.
So basically designed it to fit in that trailer, so it wouldn't be a problem getting it up there. No
Which,
surprises, you
I
know.
mean, if it could fit in that trailer, it can fit in most trailers. Right.
Oh
Pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah, very easy
Um,
within 4 feet.
so then I guess my question to you is like, you mentioned it was from that Apple video. How long ago was that? So like how long have you been
Um,
working on it, right? Like how many hours would you say went into it? Or is that not fair to do?
oh man, I'm embarrassed. Probably, man, probably like at least 120 hours, maybe
Right.
200. I'm thinking
Right.
probably 200 hours because
I think
there
so.
originally when I originally made the traversing turret, the left and right part with the
Mm-hmm.
gears, I designed the gears too small, and they were breaking the bolts essentially. So I kind of had to I redid the whole traverse pinion and rack, like the rack and pinion um,
Mm-hmm.
gears. I had a guy off a custom website basically designed the gears from scratch for me. He made plywood hobby gears for toys and things and science experiments. And I asked him, hey, can you make these big gears that are like an inch and a half thick or an inch thick, and the 7-layer plywood birch ply? And he's like, yeah, no problem. And yeah, he came through. And that worked. That was like the biggest thing, was making those gears, because I know if you get aluminum cut custom gears, that it costs you like probably 2 grand
Yeah.
for something that size, but
Right. And you're like,
this was, I
yeah,
think it was like
this is a hobby.
$120 in plywood gears. Yeah, it was some
Yeah.
guy from Seattle, Washington, that had a machine shop, had a CNC machine, and he was cutting gears, selling them on Etsy, and he was
Oh,
more than
nice.
happy to make my custom cuts for me. So
Right. Nice. Let me go. There's a couple more questions, and then I think we could probably wrap it up, I suppose. Um,
sure.
is there any reason that you felt that were you trying to aim for this year, having it ready, or were you aiming for, or did it just happen to be ready?
Uh,
Like, did you set a deadline and like aim for that,
yeah.
or was
So,
it like, hey,
well, last year, I wanted to bring something like that last year, but it was basically a potato gun on two little stilts, and I left it at home. I cut out the flash suppressor. I cut out the little 300 knot gun sight. A
mm-hmm,
styrofoam, painted it black and stuff. It was just a real simple, dinky thing, and I was thinking, we could get some kids to shoot this little potato launcher at the planes during combat, and then I left that at home, and once I went to Flight Fest last year, the guy with the paintball gun, Chad, I was like, oh my gosh,
mm-hmm,
somebody's doing it already. They're already doing this idea. I gotta build this whole thing. So I spent basically all of this past year working on it, and
yeah,
I've
like free
changed it.
time.
I changed the color scheme, made it look more naval.
Yeah, you had it
I
kind
got
of
that.
like it was like, we'll call it toy camo. It was like yellow,
Yeah,
black, and
yeah,
red.
yeah. I was kind of going for like a toy camouflage, sort of like a discorded color scheme, and
Right.
trying to make it look like a GI Joe toy or something. But
Right. And that's when we
didn't
did
really
our
look good.
initial yeah, that's when we
Yeah,
did our initial test. And when you came back this year, it was like, "Oh man, that's the real gun." Like that's almost a replica. Look at
yeah. I think that
that.
color blue. It
Yeah, you
was
grabbed
kind of funny.
the naval blue color. It's a little bit more blue, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, it was basically, I took some acrylic paint, I took blue and green, mixed it together, and then I took some gray, mixed that together, and then I went to Ace Hardware and I said, "Can you make this color?" They're like, "Yeah, what's it called?" And I said, Battleship Blue," and they're like, "Oh, okay." So they
Right.
threw it
Yeah,
on
you
there
did
and I
good.
painted it. Yeah, I
You
thought
did
it
good.
looked great. Some
I'm
somebody, some of the comments, some of the kids thought that it was from NATO because I painted the helmets the same color as the anti-aircraft gun.
you did.
Um, and they thought it was the NATO peacekeeping anti-aircraft gun, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, not bad. Um, so I guess the next question would be: was there a reason why you chose the 1 inch? Was it the size of the ammo? Were you making it kind of big enough that you can see, or like? I know that the
Originally,
journey of the ammo wasn't straight, if I remember right.
yeah, the journey was very
Tell
it
us
took some
about it.
twists and turns. So the original gun was 40 millimeters, and I found some guy off Etsy that was printing the 1-to-1 scale Bofors rounds, the 40 millimeter rounds, and he
Whoa.
printed one and he sent it to me, and then I went to some art shop and I bought a silicone casting kit, and I took the round that popped out of the replica that he had printed me, and I made an ice mold out of it. And it was basically a long 40 millimeter Bofors ice round, and I shot that
Dang.
out of the original prototype cannon, and it kind of went out and went sideways. And
Oh,
I
okay.
was like, it'd be cool to shoot a big 40 millimeter ice ball out of this thing. But I think the actual rounds they cause a lot of problems being all long and have to cast them and stuff. So
Yeah, it's
I noticed that they perfectly fit a ping pong ball, and that's
oh
about 40 millimeters. And I found some whiskey, some drinks, ice ball makers at a department store, and then I just started making those molds. And then my buddy had a machine shop, and he took 2 blocks of aluminum and cut out half hemispheres exactly 40 millimeters wide. And we used the aluminum ice blocks to shape the rounds to fit perfectly down the barrel. The reason I went with the 1 inch dump valve was for that's the most volume you could get. Like the key is the volume, getting the volume of air down the barrel to get that max velocity most efficiently. So
okay.
yeah, so and if anyone's listening, don't use ice because you're gonna have a lot of problems. It's very finicky. It melts too slow, it melts too fast. You have to put dry ice in your cooler. You need access to a deep freezer. It's a huge hassle. If I could do it over again, I would just inject water filled ping pong balls and shoot those all day long and just have people help clean them up afterwards. Because
Right. Yeah, I remember there were talks about like you had found biodegradable ping pong balls, so you're like just in
yep,
case one doesn't get picked up, like
yep, yep.
we're not like just destroying this
Yeah,
the land we get to fly on. You know,
exactly. That's why I went with the ice originally. I
yeah,
realized that you shoot
great
ice,
solution.
you don't have to worry about picking stuff up after an attack. You could just
No.
let it melt. And actually, one of my buddies was saying that I should use the in World War II. They had some idea to build aircraft carriers out of sawdust and ice, like frozen
Yep.
sawdust ice
Yep.
slurry.
Floating concrete.
Yeah,
They
and the
called it like
reason,
the frozen concrete or whatever, right?
yeah, yeah, it had some name I remember, and
Mm-hmm.
my buddy Kai was telling me, hey, why
Make
don't
it
you
out of
try
that.
sawdust and ice? Because that'll melt way slower than normal ice. And I was like, that's a brilliant
Right.
idea. So
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
2 prototypes at my house right now. So there might be
Nice.
sawdust ice next year.
Nice.
So I don't have to
Good.
deal with melting ice balls in the heat out there.
Well, you will, but it will be less concern. Plus, you can scope out where all the dry ice places are from,
Yeah.
are nearby. Um, any were there any other obstacles that you kind of ran into along the way you want to
Yeah.
talk about?
Yeah. So one of the other things was, so I used a 90-degree angle grinder for um having the left gunner position, the kid on the left side turned a handle. He turned a handle kind of over end in front of him, and that went through a 90-degree bevel gear that was an upcycled old angle grinder. I wound up going on Facebook Marketplace, finding 2 old angle grinders for sale from a
Mm-hmm.
gentleman, and I took one and grinded down the other, cut off the armature of the motor, and then basically cut some flat spaces on the output shaft, and then I drilled a hole in the input shaft and put set screws in there. I used
Okay, right,
a
yeah.
die, I think a tap or die kit to cut the holes, and then I just used some 1-inch steel pipe to join that with a live oak dowel that went down to the pinion gear that traversed the turret, and that caused a lot of problems. That actually took me the most time, was getting that 90-degree angle and reinforcing the live oak dowel so it didn't break, because I think at your house we noticed that
Yeah, it was
the
wobbly
bolts
or
bolts sheared out at one point, so we
hmm
wound up using hardened like 1/4-inch drill bits, I think, at
yeah,
your house.
we may have,
You
yeah.
remember that?
I think I had a couple extra.
And yeah, so if you, when we were using the poplar dowel to do the azimuth, the left and right, that also kind of cracked a little. So I wound up using live oak
Okay.
dowel shaft to turn the gear, and that helped. I wrapped it in epoxy fiberglass,
Nice.
and it did not fail the whole time. With probably, I don't know, 10 kids wailing on the gears, wailing on the cranks and stuff. So I was very impressed that it took a long time, but it worked. The hard work was worth it. So I was glad there were
Yeah, so
kids to get on it and help and participate, get their hands on something, and kind of get that STEM technology, science, engineering experience. So
so how did you get through? Because that's one of the difficulties of any long project where you're coming up with something relatively new. I mean, though there is in fact a Bofors AA gun, the way you're doing it is something that nobody else has done, uh, and whatever you run into is new. So how do you get through those failures or those kind of setbacks where you're like, oh man? I mean, that kind of goes with whenever we come up with a new plane idea, it's the same idea, right? You come up with the idea, you make it, you cross your fingers, you try to use an educated guess and get it to fly, but doesn't always. Sometimes it just ends in catastrophe, right? Like you're like, well, how do we get through that? How did you get through those points in this project?
so I remember when I was taking I think I was in martial arts, and when I was a kid, I think the sensei told me something like or I think I heard this somewhere. Um, you laugh, you cry in the dojo and laugh on the battlefield, right? So what I did to get through, like, each new thing that I put on that gun, like a gear or a handle or a seat or a spring or a pulley to move the thing up and down, left and right,
Hmm.
uh, I wound up regression testing everything. I basically had my nephews come over and beat it to heck. Get on it, sit on the seat, jump on it, do the handles as hard as they could. And every time it broke or every time something got wobbly or something like that, I would take notes and I would write down what I needed to improve and put it up on my little dry erase board up in the room there. And
Right.
even when I went to your house and had your kids on it, they revealed a bunch of weaknesses that I wound up reinforcing. I think
Hmm.
I doubled the thickness of the elevation handle, and I took the gears out for the azimuth, the left and right
Right.
thing. I redesigned that thing probably 3 times
I
because
I know.
moving that whole turret left and right
Yeah.
is a lot of inertia, and it was a lot of shear strain on those plywood gears, and
Right.
I just wound up basically beating it up at your house, at my house, and fixing it before I got to Flight Fest. So
Right.
um, just doing a lot of regression testing, because I keep telling myself, okay, what is going to fail? Okay, this is going to come undone, so I'm going to put Loctite on this bolt. Okay, this thing's going to break, so I'm going to wrap it in fiberglass and epoxy. Okay, this thing is going to come loose, so I'm going to have, a 1/4-inch drill bit for this thing. And
Right.
I basically put all the tools I used to fix it in one bag, and I had that with me, like, in my pocket as I was, you know, carting that thing out to the flight line,
Nice.
to make
So
sure that it
so
would work.
let's okay, then let's talk about that. So how
Yeah.
did it perform during Flight Fest? Explain, let's talk about your Flight Fest experience. Mhm.
So, well, first thing, what I want to say is, thank you, Brian Phillips and Andy, for being the other seat. Thank you for helping out. Brian
Yeah.
showed up, and he was a great helper. He helped print the bearing holders for the azimuth gear and the elevation gear. That
Yeah.
I could not have done it without him. And his kid Andy showed up, and he was a great sport. He sat in the seat, put the helmet on, he turned the crank, he moved the gun around. My nephew Gerald, he was a great sport. He got up there, it was really hot, but he toughed it out. He put his feet up on the pedals, and they were really good sports. They're good kids that kind of really made the project come alive. I mean, um, I
Yeah.
think so. One of the things I noticed was the ice. Uh, the ice was very finicky. I knew it was finicky the whole time, and I not putting the dry ice in the cooler before I left really like caused a lot of
Well,
delays. I only
well,
participated in 2
I
combats.
was going to say, how about this? Let's continue on. You just tell us about. Yeah, we'll do a stop, start, continue at the end. How's that?
Okay.
What would you stop? What would you start? What should you continue? Right. Um, but
Start,
let's talk
continue.
about. Yeah, that's something we do. We do with scout events. We get to the end of the event, and we go, okay, what should we stop doing? Right? What didn't go well? What should we do differently next time? And then what should we start doing? Like when we realize, man, we should have done this. Like, shoot, we forgot. So you make notes of the things you should do next time
Yeah.
that you realized along the way, and then you make a note of what went well. You know, these were great. We absolutely need to make sure these continue. You know what I mean? So we can
Yeah.
do that at the end here. But so when you went to Flight Fest, like I know within like the first morning, you had a ton of people coming up, kind of going, "Whoa, look at that!" Like once
Yeah.
you had it kind
Yeah.
of out and assembled, like people were come by to stop. And I think Noah from Flight Fest, he stopped
Yeah.
in, and then from that point forward, you were part of the event.
Yeah. Yeah. I told I Yeah, I told Carl Leidick about it. He showed, I think he texted Josh Bixler, and Noah came over and saw it and was like, "Oh, that's amazing. What is that?
Hmm.
Oh, let's do it. Let's put it in. Let's go." And it was great. They filmed some content. Kind of he actually So Noah came through. He All the ice that melted in my cooler, I went to Target that night and I found these 4-ball ice ball mold things. I think I bought 6 of them or something, and I gave them all to him. He went to his house, God bless
Yep.
him, and he filled them up with water, and he actually found some dark blue food dye, and he put drops of food dye in there, and he colored all of them dark blue so they could be seen going out the barrel. And he brought them back the next day, and I remember once we rolled the anti-aircraft gun up to the flight line to shoot in combat there. I think I had my dad, and I had somebody else's dad on the flight line there helping press the ice balls together with the aluminum molds that would get them exactly an inch and a half thick. And
Hmm.
and as
Yeah, I
soon as
remember
they were
those.
done, they threw them. Yeah, they threw them in the cooler, and they rolled the cooler over to me, and I just kept dropping them in one by one to the top of the hopper there, the bolt action hopper, and
Yeah,
we just kept aiming and shooting as much as we could until the thing was over.
nice.
And
So how many combats were you able to get it in? I know with
we
ammo
we
being limited.
we got him. We got in 2 combats. Um, I think we shot about 30 or 40 shots, and I'm still waiting on the confirmation. I think we hit 1 plane in the second combat, but I remember I
Nice.
remember the plane got hit by 2 other aircraft at the exact same time. I remember the round went right through the crowd. So
So
I'm
if
hoping
nothing else,
somebody
it
out
was an
there has got
assist.
that. I was so hoping somebody out there got that on their cell phone. They posted it to YouTube, and I find it
Right.
maybe like 6 months from now, and I can put
Yeah,
that on
I
the
hope you do.
forum.
Do you remember what the big plane looked like?
I remember it was a white flying wing, and I remember hearing a thok and then a flump as it hit another plane.
Was it like
Um,
a 5-footer, 6-footer? Was it the 40 incher?
is probably just 3 foot wide wingspan. It was just kind
Okay,
of one of those small
that's
flying
smaller
wings.
guy. Okay, yeah, like
Yeah,
an assassin or something like that. Okay, cool.
yeah, yeah.
Nice. Okay, so one unconfirmed kill, or at least one assist, definitely.
Yep, yep.
More importantly, and I think this is why you did it. Um, how much fun what was the report back on how much fun the kids had, or the crowd had, kind of watching this, this replica do its job?
I remember.
What's your impressions?
So I think Sam from Peter Shrepol's channel, he was talking to me about the design. I was telling him about how I made the bearing. He got a real nice video. He really liked it. That got a lot of views on the Instagram page. I remember Noah Bixler just really liked it, and he wants it there. He wants me to
Hmm.
bring it back next year. Just stay in contact with him. I remember he's
Right.
telling me. I texted him a bunch after I left, and he said he was. I sent him a bunch of construction photos because he wanted to make like an episode, I think, on the
Nice.
channel. So,
Okay.
and a lot of dads came up to me. They were like, "Yeah, this thing's great. You know, it looks good. It's." They just liked it,
Yeah.
and
How about the kids? Did the kids have fun shooting it? Even though
yeah,
they didn't get too many hits, right? They only got the
they
one.
a lot of the younger kids, I think they thought it was cool. They didn't quite understand it, I think, as much as like some of the adults did and me, but
Right.
I think they
What
enjoyed
about
it.
your
I
gunners?
think they loved it. Yeah. Gerald, I guess he's not used to having that much attention, so he was processing it, but I think he liked it a lot.
Yeah.
He said I was the best uncle in the world. Um,
That's
but
the best kind of.
I think I'm his only uncle, so I don't know how
Yeah.
much stake that has in it, but uh, he
Well,
liked it. Yeah,
take it and run, right?
yeah, I will take that. I'll
Right.
take that. That's fine.
And
And I
did you
think
get any feedback
Andy
from Andrew or Brian?
Andy said he really liked it. Brian Phillips told me Andy enjoyed it. He was having a good time out there,
Yeah.
being part of the
Yeah.
whole project. So
I know I remember Quinn and Logan both had big giant smiles on their face. And I know Logan, after he and I were trying to hit the um oh my god, the Kate that we had built
Kate,
for it,
yeah,
the torpedo bomber,
yeah.
the Japanese torpedo bomber that we designed for it. And I'm sorry, I didn't even know you were doing those combats. Otherwise, I probably would have. I don't know, but maybe next time we need to make sure that we have like 2 or 3 of those ready for next year. I think that's easy enough to do. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I got plenty of time. I'm gonna I've been working on the one you gave me. I'm gonna start painting that when I get back.
mhm.
So yeah, I'll have a couple ready, and
I was just
we
thinking that
can.
maybe you might be able to say, "Is there anything you can do?" Be like, "Look, you need to get this finished. It needs a motor and servos. It's almost done." And that way somebody can fly it. But no, it's good, dude. I'm glad we can get that done, and I'm glad we have those designed. And maybe we can build a couple of zeros too from the uh, 13th Squadron or something like that to go with it. But yeah.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Are you planning on putting together some sort of article or a build log or a schematic that people can see, or are they going to have to wait a whole year to see if where the flight test video stuff lands?
I'm so the whole thing is in a series of photos on my phone and a bunch of sketches in my notebook
Okay,
and a bunch of emails to that guy on Etsy that I had to do the gear. Um,
right.
I'm gonna try to make like a PowerPoint presentation, put it on a YouTube video, and then maybe
Okay,
link it in the
perfect.
forums there.
All right. Well, if you
Um,
do, I hope you keep me posted because then I can add it to these show notes. That way, if you're coming in after the fact and Ethan, you've put that together, they can go and click the link and go take a look because it's really impressive. You did such a great job with it. So you should give yourself a big pat on the back, a big congrats,
oh,
because
thanks,
it
man.
was
Yeah,
it was quite a lot. I know it was a lot more effort than a typical. I designed this plane, and it really did bring joy to not just you, but it brought joy to all the people who looked on it and knew exactly what it was. Every kid who sat in that chair, I know, they seemed to have a good time, and it was pretty cool to be able to see that on the sidelines of the combat.
yeah,
And
I
I'm hoping
do.
that you can work out your system for making sure ammo's ready and loading it, so that way it can
Oh
be more
yeah,
of a thing. I did confirm it's a 4-man crew. So yeah, you
yeah,
need to get somebody else who's in charge of ammo.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, my plans. in my plans for next year, I have an auto loading mechanism that my buddy helped me make.
Nice.
Um, it's got like a stepper motor and the pressure sensor and everything. So
That's awesome. Dude, I know. I
it's
saw it.
one
I'm
of the
like, well,
big
you're going high
features.
tech now.
Yeah,
What's going on
yeah,
there?
yeah.
That's so
It
cool.
looks a little beyond the scope of Flight Fest, but
Nice. All right. And
I mean,
this,
people like that, man. They like seeing that, so I figure why
yeah, I
not?
mean, that's what it's about. Like, to me, it was always about finding those, like, somebody went above and beyond, and it wasn't just
Yeah.
cool. It went like, wow, okay, that's really cool. Like, that's somebody who, just like you went way above and beyond to get the thing, working. And like you said, stress tests and all that stuff. Um, so again, I really appreciate you taking your time with this. We could probably close on a stop, start, continue. So how about this? What are the things that you did that you realized were a mistake that you should probably stop doing? Don't do that in the next time.
With the gun?
Yeah. Or with the gun and the project, and bring it to Flight Fest. Right. Cause I know that's kind of like a whole ball of wax, but it's like, okay, when I go to
Uh,
do this again, don't do these
don't
things.
okay, don't let the little details slip through the cracks. I failed to get the dry ice right before I left, and I
Hmm.
sacrificed about 60 rounds that I worked real hard on freezing in my freezer and shaping to the right shape and putting in little trays, and it all melted in that sun out there in Ohio.
Yeah. Okay.
And
All
I
right.
wish I just spent more time getting that ammo ready. You know,
Okay. Okay. So don't disregard making sure that the ammo stays cold.
yes.
Stop. So anything else you feel like you're like, oh yeah, we can't do that. That thought I thought it was gonna be good, and no, we don't need to
I
do that.
wish I wish I overbuilt the gear handles there because I feel like they're
Okay.
still a
So
little fragile. Um,
okay. So then that would probably be the thing to put on the start, right? Go
yeah,
go back and redo those handles tougher. Maybe
yep.
using
Just
metal or
overbuild them, build them way too big because they're made out of wood, and if they're like two times too big, it doesn't even matter. I mean, it's
okay.
all contributing to it working later,
Right. Okay.
instead of failing later.
Anything else you realize you should start doing? You're like, oh, I didn't do that. I really should have done that. Let me put that on the list of things to do. Things to make sure I
Um,
do next time.
I think pretty much the ammo and the I don't know. I think I should have tested it more. I think I should have had my nephews
Do live
come
testing on it.
over. Yeah, do more live tests. Like take it out to an RC field and bring my nephews and have them like turn it around and shoot it a bunch of times because
Okay.
we did get to do that at your house at your
Yep.
RC field, and that I should have done that twice before we went to Flight Fest up where I live because I found three really great RC fields, and I showed them
Nice.
the pictures, and they're all a bunch of old timers. They're like,
Nice.
"Oh, bring that out for the fun, bring it out for the fun fly. Everyone will love to see that."
Right.
So I wish I
Cool.
took more initiative with that.
Okay. So start going to the local fun flies and bring the
Yes.
gun.
Yep.
And then you can use
Definitely.
that as a way to stress test it for the big show. We'll call it.
Yep. 100%. Yep.
Okay, nice. And then what about continue? Things that did as well or better than you expected. Do you want to make sure, hey, don't forget to do this next time? Because this is good and we want to keep doing it.
So the flash suppressor and the water jacket, I think that looked great. I think
It did.
the big black angled flash suppressor hanging off the end, and then that corrugated drainage pipe that
Mm-hmm.
looks like a recoil cover. I think that it sold the look to any kid with some kind of imagination or obsession with World War II. It sold the whole idea. People walking by.
Yeah.
Um, I want to do that again, but in Pet G and not PLA because the PLA kind of sagged a little. I don't know if that's
Okay.
counts as the first one, but
What about looking for just a general cone, some sort of pre-made plastic or metal cone and paint it?
I had the original one was made out of paper, and I got that at a craft store, but it wasn't exactly symmetrical. From
Yeah,
far
it
away,
doesn't
it
sound
looked
like a big.
great, but it was just it looked like a paper craft thing, and
Okay,
I just like that sharp edges of the print there that work.
nice,
But Pet
cool.
G, Brian Phillips says Pet G next time, that'll work in the heat. So
Yeah, yeah, it's melting temperature is much higher, so
yeah.
should hold up. Good. Well, cool. Anything else you want to add to the continue list, or should we close it up?
Uh, I think an extra fill valve. I only had one fill port. There was only one orifice in the tank where the air was going in. I think if I had one on the front, one on the back, it could have filled faster, filled in 1 second instead of like two.
Okay, so that's a
And
start.
that
Is
could
that
have
a
been,
at a valve?
yeah, because the automatic Arduino loader that has two bang bang valves, which are basically two solenoid valves that are either off or on, and they fill very quickly. They're
Mm-hmm.
1/4 inch NPT valves, and they come off 140 psi first stage on a scuba tank, and they fill real quick with the pressure sensor telling the pressure. But I want to kind of incorporate that for the single bolt action.
Nice. Good. Look, I loved it. The only thing I regret is not being at the site any, more than we were. Like I felt like I was a terrible co-camper. I was always at the
No,
stupid
man,
build
you
site
had
on the
your
other side.
project. You had your Noob Wonder project to do, and that looked
Yeah.
great when you were flying up there with the twin engines and the real big wingspan.
Right.
That
Yeah.
thing was
Hey.
gliding forever, man. That was the longest. I mean, it was a
Yeah. I'm like,
glider.
oh, it's off, and they're like, okay, it's gliding. I'm like, yep, it's still gliding. Still gliding halfway across the field. Still
Yeah,
gliding.
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, it's so lightly loaded. It was 16 pounds
yeah. I
over
think.
12 foot wingspan by 24 inches. Right. So you
Did
had
you ever
24
get the
square
wing
feet.
loading? Did you ever get the actual wing loading on that
Well, no,
thing?
it's 24 square feet divided by 16 pounds. So that was less than a pound a square foot. Right.
Yeah,
Do I
yeah.
have
It's
that
like
right?
10 ounces per square foot or something like that. That's basically a glider.
Yeah. 10 ounces. Right. And that was, yeah. Yeah. And that's, and I would have to say, I think I had I think we did when we pulled it out, it was like 3.9 volts when we were done. And I flew that for 5 minutes, 5.5, maybe 6 minutes,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, so I probably
And
could have
you
flown it
you
for close to 8 or 9 minutes.
you weren't even. I mean, you weren't even going full throttle. I mean, right? You were just kind of cruising.
Yeah, for the most part, I wasn't trying to do too much. I did full throttle a couple times to do some of the differential thrust as well as to do a loop. When I was doing the loop, I did that just to make sure, I didn't want to do the roll because the rolls are so slow. I just
Yeah,
didn't trust that I'd be able to get it over in time. And I'm like,
yeah.
I know
I
I'm going to
don't
dumb
blame
thumb it
you.
because there's so many people. Like I would turn it inverted and then dumb thumb it. And then I'd be like, oh no, I didn't want to,
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to test the whole deal. I was like, shoot. I was glad to get it done. I was glad to get it back home in one piece. It landed really well, generally speaking. I kind of caught the edge of the corn, I think, at the end of
Oh
the
man,
land, but
it greased in real
yeah,
nice.
but
So
it
it's
did
great landing.
otherwise. Yeah, it did so good otherwise. Now, I took it home and I made it pretty. I added colored sunburst, orange in the
Yeah,
front, blue in the back, which kind of works with the logo, which it freaking looks awesome. Problem was, um, in one of the we'll call wing overs or whatever,
uh
because
huh,
I was doing differential. So the one was working full tilt, the other one was working less full tilt.
uh
And
huh.
either I heated up the motor or something, but the motor came off. And I was out there because objects that are that size may be further away than they appear.
Wait,
And
when
I
you were at
landed.
Flight Fest
No,
or
this is
here?
when I brought it back. Like I brought it back. I'm like, let me test it out. Like I put color
Oh
on it, and I'm like,
no!
let me give it a go and just make sure everything's running fine. And then of
Oh
course, like I get to the
no!
field and I'm thinking there are going to be people there, and then as I'm there, there's one guy and he's closing up shop. And by the time I get it together, I got storm clouds rolling in, and he's like leaving, like literally leaving. So I'm like, how the hell am I going to get this 17-pound bird in the air? Like, I tried to scoot along the ground, and I couldn't get enough speed to get up in the air by itself. I need to put wheels on the bottom just so it gets a better angle, maybe.
Yeah,
And
like a
then,
little fall away trolley or something.
right. Well, I mean, even if I just had two bigger, like we'll call 5-inch chunks on either side near the main, right? I mean, where the batteries kind of sit.
Yeah.
It just kind of it'd keep it up off the ground for the most part, and it'd roll easy, and it would give it a little bit of positive angle, a little bit more, so it'd get up probably easier in the air. Like there's enough power. And then
Oh, yeah,
like
it's
then I
plenty.
heaved it on my shoulder, you know. So I'm trying to and I reached down with the one hand while holding on to the main fuse, hoping that it wouldn't gust. And I kicked up the throttle to like 75%, and I just heave hoed, and I
Uh-huh.
got my hands back on the throttle as best I could, and which was cool because I was able to get it up in the air, and it's I was sort of untested because I was I'd kind of reassembled it and all this stuff, and I wasn't sure if all the angles were where they're supposed to be, so I know I'd have to trim. And I did some trim, but I couldn't get it so it was in the middle of this, like I could leave the sticks alone, right? So I always had to
Yeah.
put pressure on it, which sucked. But I mean, I was able to fly it around. I flew it around like 6 or 7 times. I did a loop. I did a couple. I tested the differential throttle, which wasn't very effective. I think I need to change the limits of that a little bit more. But
Yeah,
somewhere,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I know
I mean, part
I
of it is
know
like they're really close to the fuse, so it's not like I have them way out, and they should be doing crazy stuff. They're like, it's a lot of wing to
yeah,
wing run.
you can change the offsets and that make it
Yeah,
way because
yeah. I'm
I
gonna
know
have
at
to.
low speeds you'll notice it more than at higher speeds.
Yeah, I suppose so. But anyway, so I was playing around with that, and then apparently one of the motors, the right one, which is the one I was using to heave over to the left, that one went wing and it went off. And of course, meanwhile, I'm going, oh crud, I got to get this plane home. Like, do I just sort of? So I started to gun it, and then I just enough to kind of keep it level, but it was meanwhile kind of turning circles, like slow, lazy circles, because there's no rudder to kind of counteract any
No way.
offset thrust, right? So I'm doing these little weird, lazy curly cues around and slow circles, and I'm out there. I mean, I'm out
Oh
past
no.
where the sprinklers are. Like I'm out, and it's at the end of the field. Like I'm way out near the, like straight out left, and it's way the f out there. And I had no idea how far out until it went past. Like I saw it land past where the sprinkler line is, and it was like coming straight back. Like it was from the pivot like straight back to us, but it was like it was almost perpendicular to the field. Right, the field runs left, right, and then things perpendicular, and it's running across the road. But it was like way past, and that's out. I was like, shoot. Thankfully, those stupid fins, and I call them stupid. I love the fins, honestly. But those fins saved it because those are I saw two little white tips sticking out of the beans way the heck out there. I'm like, cool, I can find it. Because otherwise I would have straight up panicked. Then
Oh
I found it
no.
and I'm like, cool, I got the thing back. Like it had no damage except the motor mount and the motor were gone. The ESC was
So
in.
was it really did it noticeably was it tail heavy or
No,
like when
no,
the
it's
motor
fine.
fell off? Like did you
No,
notice
no,
that?
no, it was I mean, I couldn't tell. I mean, it wasn't, I was already kind of holding it
Trim
in
was
place,
still
so I
good,
might
it
have.
just kept going one side, yeah.
Yeah, it
Okay.
just kept kind of curly queuing, and like I said, I had to hold it to fly level anyway, so I may have adjusted where the hold point was. It wasn't significantly different though. I mean, that motor really didn't make a huge difference. It did help. Um, yeah, and so I lost the motor. I don't know where
Oh.
it's somewhere in the beans because
Well,
I was,
I can send you another one. I think I got like 6 or 8 of them left, so.
holy crap, really? No,
Yeah.
you don't need, like so if it helps, like I already purchased. I went on eBay that day and I saw one for sale, like a used one. So basically, like clearly they're like you, where like, oh, I had a ton of quadcopters and my whatever didn't care. They just said get rid of the rest,
I wonder if it's
So
somebody I know.
you're probably right. I got their
I'm
name, so I'll
using
have to take a look. I'll send you.
KDE.
Yeah, I'll send it right anyway. But so I sent that it was like $70, I think. If you buy them new, they're 180, right? So
Yeah, not bad.
so I was like, okay, for 70, that's a decent, and like that's all I need. I can get it, and I'm gonna have to make a better motor mount. Is really what that comes down to. I'll have to do like a metal aluminum motor mount. So it's one, it acts like a heat sink, and two, probably more importantly, I can anchor the dang thing properly. For pulling the 12 pounds of force or whatever it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an adventure. And unfortunately, like now I can't. It's been hot as all get out. I'm not standing in that field trying to walk through. I did a number of walkthroughs, but like the beans are just tall enough to kind of obscure the path. So I think my best bet is probably to like roll in there with an RC car and an FPV system, and just like literally run up and down each aisle, and hope I catch like a prop or actually catch the motor.
Yeah.
That's probably my best bet. But I got to put a really tall, like carbon fiber tube with a big flag. So in case the battery dies on the thing, I can go out and get that.
Yeah, like those shopping carts. Yeah.
But yeah, no, the second fly was great. Dude was flying pretty good. Like I knew I had to, like I didn't have my tools with me because I would have adjusted I would have come around once and like landed and adjusted both of the ailerons.
Yeah.
So that I could fly, so I could adjust it so I could fly without trim. And then I think it would have been in great shape. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it like you said, it's like, oh, it sucks that I lost the motor. Like I'm really bummed. But it told me, okay, the system that you have, like the actual stanchion is okay, but the motor mount isn't adequate enough. It does not transfer the load like well enough. Right. I was relying on glue and tape pretty much to do the work. And even though the stanchions are solid, it's still glue and tape transferring it to those pieces.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
And they
it's
just
like
didn't make it. It's like
1,400 watts coming off that motor. I think.
No, I know.
You got that 14 or 15 inch prop on it.
Yeah, but 14 by, and it was like I don't know what that size. It's huge. So like the one that came on it is like a 18 by 4.5 or something. Like it's huge prop. Is the one that came with the next one. And I recognize like that's what's recommended by the manufacturer.
I have some thrust data I could share with you from testing those motors if you're interested.
I would love that. I'd love that. So yeah, go ahead. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you, Ethan, for your time today, of course. All right, Joe. Hey, look, this has been good. Would you do me the honor of closing out as you usually do?
Of course, my second favorite thing to do other than opening us.
Do you remember how?
It's been a minute. Let's see if I can do it.
All right, I'll be watching all the things.
Well, guys, as always, we thank you for tuning in and listening. We hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we've enjoyed taking the opportunity to catch up and just chill as two buddies, sitting down and talking about stuff that for some reason you guys want to listen to. Thank you for that. As always, we thank our patrons for continuing to keep the lights on. If you're interested in becoming a patron and helping to support us, you can go to patreon.com/aviationrcnoob and contribute there. No expectations. We do this because we enjoy it. It just helps keep the lights going. Thank you, of course, to all of our listeners who have continued to support us over the last several years at this point.
Can you believe it's been years?
We're getting to that point we can say that.
Oh, my God. It's crazy.
If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, feel free to reach out to us. You can get us at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Honestly, I'm not going to say the others right now because
that's okay.
I hadn't checked mine in forever.
I don't think I have either.
Yeah,
but reach out with the Gmail account, and one of us will see it, and we'll. I'm certain we'll get back to you pretty quickly.
Feel free to join the Discord. They're not quite as talkative as they are at other times, but we have a healthy community of guys who enjoy hanging out and talking and sharing pictures and being encouraging to one another, which a lot of times is just that extra spark you need. Somebody else who's just as crazy as you are, who'll say, yeah, do the thing. Swing by the website, aviationrcnoob.com, and hopefully by the time this episode goes up, I will have a fresh link ready to go. There'll be a link there that you can click. That'll help you join. Just remember, when you join, accept the rules. Funny enough, if you don't accept the rules, you don't see anything else in the server.
Everybody's like, why is there only one thing? I'm like, oh, that's because you need to go accept the rules. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, there's a ton of stuff going on here. I'm like, yep.
Yep,
there
Funny
is.
how that works.
Like I just in the last, maybe day, there's new stuff in batteries, podcast guest questions, unrelated, which is usually some sort of random but sort of funny stuff. Plane finishing ideas, motors, 3D printing, and there's almost always something new in general, and build party text. So build party is usually somebody building something. General is just talking planes all the time. Usually what people are kind of currently working on. But yeah,
Nice.
that's just in like the last day and a half. And I've been posting a bunch of stuff here and there in composites, but I'm not the only one. Uncle Rava, of course, has got some choice things, as well as Mr. Tony, Flying Tiger, from Dynamic RC, and Mutley. Ethan's been doing a lot of this kind of stuff too, as he's been thinking about it. So, yeah, come on board, engage the community. We're here for you, and we're excited to see what you're up to.
Absolutely. And I think we've hit on all the major points we normally hit on the outro. So, Matt, unless you got anything else.
No, it must be like riding a bike, Joe. You got it all.
I try, man. I try.
Awesome. No, that's good stuff. Good.
Well, guys, thank you again, and we will catch y'all next time.
Bye.
Look at that. You nailed that bye.
Yeah, I've done this before.
Just a time or two.
One chip.
Well, we're going to see how this goes. I am currently pulling down and installing Open Foam, which is
What's open for?
a open source CFD.
Oh, hot stuff.
We'll see. I've been interested to see if what I could do with it.
Dude, this is great.
Oh, are you looking it up now?
Well, yeah. I thought it was going to be a foam cutting thing.
I had that window. Remember, I said I didn't have screens in the windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Once you said that, I'm like, oh man, he pulled that cat pulled the Rigby.
I don't
Went
know
out,
if she
came
actually went out, but when I saw in the webcam something in the window, and I turned, and there she was, facing inward. So she may have just jumped up and then turned around, or she may have gone all the way outside and then been on the return trip.
Oh my God, almost 100 episodes. Holy snot.
Yeah. Here we were like, oh yeah, we're going to do something big and amazing for episode 100. Life.
Yep.